The courtroom was dead silent. No cough, no shuffle, not even the groan of the wooden benches had the audacity to shatter the tension that hung in the air like a fog. The only noise was the nervous foot-tapping of Kody Brown's heel against the cold marble floor beneath the plaintiff's table. Her gaze was fixed forward, breathing steady, fists clenched hard around the file of papers in front of her. Evidence of betrayal, months in the making. Then slowly, she stood up. Everyone's eyes turned to her. Wearing a navy blue blazer, with a pale pink blouse, Kody was the very picture of calm woman, but the tempest raging inside her eyes told a different story. Her lips trembled before she finally managed to open them. And when she spoke, her voice was shaky but fierce. "He lied to me," she exclaimed, and stopped. The silence with each passing second weighing more heavily. Her arm went up hesitantly, then flew out as she pointed around the room. "And to all of you." There was a collective gasp that ran through the courtroom like a wave breaking on rocks. Sitting at the defense table, David Woolley hardly winced. His mask was impassive, serene, unemotional. The same face Kody used to wake up next to, with coffee in the morning and honeyed nothings at night, now glowering back at her like a stranger. "You all witnessed it," she went on, each word elevated in pitch. "The Instagram updates. The interviews. The promises of love. I shared with the world that I finally had my fairy tale ending." And he posed for the cameras with a smile while keeping the truth to himself. Flashbulbs flashed behind the press barrier. Even the courtroom sketch artist stopped mid-brushstroke, taken aback by the intensity in Kody's words. Court TV commentators would call this the emotional peak of the year. But for Kody, this was not about acting. This was about survival. "I escaped a 25-year poisonous marriage," she said, now looking at the judge. "I was free, finally able to breathe. I built my new life from zero with the whole world looking. And when David entered my life, I thought, this time, maybe it's real." She took a pause. Her voice cracked deeper. "I thought at last I had found peace," she claimed, tears falling from her cheek. "Instead, I entered yet another nightmare." At the gallery, Janelle Brown occupied the front row, her face set in quiet rage. She leaned slightly forward as if willing her power onto Kody from across the room. Reporters took frantic notes behind her while producers murmured news in small microphones for live broadcasts and podcasts. Kody turned to face David once more. "I brought you into my family," she told him. "I trusted you with my children, with my grandchildren. I gave you access to me, my platform. All the things I worked for after I left Kody." The name Kody Brown was like a specter suddenly appearing in the room. Everyone in that courtroom remembered the history, the hurt, the years of being ignored, mistreated, and emotionally neglected in a plural marriage in which Kody was frequently treated like an afterthought. Fans had applauded her when she departed Kody. Women all over the country had sent her letters thanking her for her courage. And now? This? She took a deep breath. The courtroom held it with her. "You said you were divorced," she told him, her tone colder now. "You said your past was in the rear view. But the reality is, you were still technically married when you asked me to marry you. You employed forged documents. You lied about money, and in the worst way possible, you applied my name, my likeness to develop your business and brand." David Woolley sat silently at the defense table. His lawyer would lean over and whisper every now and then, but he never answered. His stare was straight ahead, never once looking at Kody. "I didn't lose trust," said Kody. "I lost my dignity. My kids questioned me. The press hassled me, and every time I smiled in public, I was concealing the shame of realizing once again that I had made the wrong man." She reached into the file on the table and took out a sheaf of neatly printed papers. "Your Honor," she said, giving them to the bailiff. "Exhibit A: financial records of Mr. Woolley transferring money from joint business accounts into private accounts without my knowledge." Murmurs ran through the gallery. One journalist let her pen fall. This was no longer merely a love affair gone sour. This was deceit, and potentially worse. Kody didn't relent. Exhibit B: communication records between Mr. Woolley and a woman he described as his business partner. The messages are emotional and include conversations about continuing the deception for as long as it was to their advantage. Suddenly, the room exploded. The judge struck the gavel. "Order!" the judge shouted. Christine's hands shook as she clutched the last paper. Her gaze swept the courtroom, not in fear but in taking back what was hers. And lastly, Exhibit T. A marriage license copy proving Mr. Woolley's legal marriage to another woman still current 2 months after he asked me to marry him. It was the knockout punch. His palpable moments, someone in the back murmured, "Oh my God," into her palm. Christine's breath caught as she took a step back. "I've been publicly humiliated once before millions. I vowed I'd never let that happen again. But here I am, betrayed. Once more. Not by a husband this time, but by the one who said he loved me for my broken bits." She turned and looked straight into the cameras. "But this time," she said, "I'm not staying silent. And I'm not walking away without justice." The judge stared in silence, then gave a slow nod before turning to David and his legal team. Christine sat down, tears slipping down her cheeks, but her posture upright, her chin lifted. She had spoken her truth. The courtroom had heard it. The world had watched it, and for the very first time in a very long time, Christine Brown wasn't fearful. The courtroom was still reeling from the bombshell that Christine had dropped when she told them David Woolley was still legally wed when they were dating. The news had shaken not just the courtroom but even the media outside the courthouse, buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. Cameras snapped every movement of David's expression, but the man himself was as cold as ice, unaffected, and eerily quiet. Christine took a slow seat, her hands still shaking. She wouldn't even look at David. Too hurtful. This was the man who had kissed her forehead good morning, held her hand during holiday meals, and vowed never to hurt her. And yet here they were, opposite each other in a courtroom, fighting a war that had become intensely personal and excruciatingly public. Judge Harmon cleared his throat and addressed Christine's lawyer, a tough, fearless woman named Laura Keegan. "Miss Keegan," the judge told her, "you can go ahead." Laura stood tall and approached the middle of the courtroom. She didn't need drama. She had proof. What she was about to say would turn everything on its head. "Your Honor, the public understands Christine Brown as the lady who broke away from a very public plural marriage and had the courage to begin anew. But what they don't understand is the fraud that preceded her new life." She addressed the jury. "Today we present to you the truth." Nodding to her paralegal, Laura cued the first exhibit on the monitor in the courtroom. A high-resolution image of a doctored divorce certificate flashed on the screen. It appeared legitimate at first glance. State seal, legal font, signature. But when the camera zoomed in, the discrepancies were apparent. "Exhibit D," declared Laura. "This document was given to Christine by David Woolley, and he promised her that he was legally divorced. But as our investigation indicates, this document was a forgery created by copying a template downloaded from the internet." The judge raised an eyebrow. Jurors murmured. A man in the front row rubbed his forehead as if attempting to soak in the enormity of what he was being told. Christine hung her head, embarrassed. She had accepted that document without question. She had so desperately wanted to believe in second chances at love. Laura went on, clicking to the next slide. David's text messages, taken verbatim from a subpoenaed phone backup. One of the texts to his friend said, "I need to keep the marriage thing under wraps a little longer. She's got a fan base. This could really become something huge." Another text, to an unknown number labeled Lisa, "The Christine thing's temporary. Once her brand stabilizes mine, I'll make a clean exit." The gasps that followed were louder this time. Even the court clerk was seen swallowing hard. David's attorney tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave. "This is damning," Judge Harmon said. "Let her proceed." Laura swung round to face David. "Mr. Woolley, perhaps you might explain the meaning of her brand stabilizing yours." David shifted for the first time. His face set in a hard line, but he said nothing. His lawyer swiftly bent over to whisper something. "I'll remind you," the judge said, "that silence can be construed in terms of the evidence produced." Laura didn't press. She didn't have to. "Now," she added, "let's discuss Exhibit A, the trail of money." A new batch of documents emerged. They were bank transactions, PayPal bills, and Venmo payments. all demonstrating a pattern of flow from a shared Christine David account into a secret business account listed under David's second company, one Christine wasn't aware existed. Christine gritted her teeth. She recalled the day that David had asked her to sign for a shared business project. It's paperwork, he'd assured her. Everything's been filed already. She hadn't hesitated. She had believed in him. But the figures didn't lie. More than $70,000 had been transferred into a separate account within 4 months. The courtroom fell quiet once more. But this time it was a weighty silence. A sick silence. The kind that lingers in the air after betrayal is revealed in its naked public state. Christine's daughter McKelty sat behind her mother, attempting to keep her wits about her. She dabbed at her eyes. She had believed David too. They all had. Laura then played a short but spine-tingling audio recording. David speaking, captured by Christine when things began falling apart. Because you left Kody, you think you're special? You're another platform with followers. That's what you are to people like me. A name. A name that brings numbers. The judge appeared dazed. One of the jurors shook his head in sight. Christine buried her face in her hands for an instant. The room suspended its breath. A woman had trusted again, and been used like a brand, a bank, and a badge of fame. David then stood up, ending his silence. He faced the judge, his voice uncharacteristically level. I won't lie. I said things I shouldn't have, he said. But I never pushed her to anything. She craved the attention. She required someone to stand by her and smile for those cameras. I was that person. Christine's eyes leapt up. Think I needed a mascot. She bristled, standing up again. Think after getting through decades of loveless marriage I was just so desperate for a pretty face to stand alongside me. The judge attempted to silence her. But Christine wouldn't let up. I needed trust. I needed truth. Not someone using my name to fill their pockets at the expense of lying to my face. David shrugged minutely. It's business, Christine. Publicity is power. The words lingered in the air like the smoke from a fire. Judge Harmon eventually declared a recess. As the jury was led away, the courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters ran outside to deliver every word to live streams. TLC producers were writing press releases. Twitter ignited with hashtags such as #Christine deserves better, #Justice for Christine, and #Woolley exposed. Christine sat in her chair, eyes shut, breathing deeply. Janelle sat down next to her and grasped her hand. Good, she whispered. You're doing it for every woman who ever gave someone a second chance and got burned. Christine nodded. It's not just about me anymore. It's about truth. And I won't let him recreate it. The tension in the courtroom hadn't even started to abate when the bailiff approached, crumpled note in hand for the judge. Judge Harmon read it quietly, his expression changing slightly. He raised his eyes, and in a steady but authoritative tone he stated, "The court will now hear the testimony of a new witness, Kody Brown." An audible collective gasp from the gallery. Christine's head jerked toward the doors. Her breath caught in her throat. Kody Brown, her ex-husband of 25 years, the man she had finally broken free from, was about to take the witness stand in her case against David Woolley. From the back of the room, the doors swung open. Kody walked in slowly, his signature curls a bit more disheveled than usual. He wore a dark gray suit, no tie, and a thin layer of visible discomfort across his face. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered in disbelief. Even Robin Brown, sitting in the third row, reached out and clutched Mary's arm with wide eyes. "Did you know he was coming?" Mary whispered. "No," Robin whispered back. And Christine's face says she didn't either. Christine was frozen, shocked. The last one on earth she ever wanted to see in this courtroom was Kody. When he walked up to the stand, he nodded politely to the judge but wouldn't meet Christine's eye. "Mr. Brown," the judge said, "you know you are testifying under oath?" "I do," Kody answered tightly. Christine's lawyer, Laura Keegan, moved forward hesitantly. "Mr. Brown, why are you here to testify in this case, please?" Kody fiddled with the mic. "I'm here because, despite everything, Christine is the mother of my children, and I couldn't just sit idly by and let her get played again." Gasps. Cameras snapped. Even Christine's eyes widened in shock. "Was this support?" Laura leaned forward. "Can you tell me more about what you mean by played again?" Kody nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Look, Christine and I have our past, And no, we didn't break up on good terms. But when she began dating David, I made an effort to stay out of it, until I began hearing things. He dug into his overcoat pocket and produced a thin folder of papers. These are reports made to me anonymously, regarding David Woolley's marriage status, business relationships, and former relationships with women. I didn't want to believe it, so I dug. He raised the papers, and what I unearthed matched exactly what she's complaining about now. Christine's eyes narrowed. Whether she was angry or appreciative was impossible to say. Kody, out of all people, was standing behind her. And why did you wait so long to speak up? Laura demanded. Kody went silent for a long time before answering. Pride. He didn't want to get involved. There was a part of him that believed she'd return on bended knee when it all fell apart. A wave of shocked murmurs surged through the room. Christine's jaw clenched. There it was. The Kody she knew. But she didn't return, Kody went on. She stood up straight. She went public. She called for justice. And when I saw David's text published online, where he called her a brand and a stepping stone, I knew I had to testify. Laura nodded. So, just to make sure, Mr. Brown, are you telling me that you yourself verified that David was still married when he was courting Christine? I did, Kody said. His divorce wasn't complete when he proposed. And Christine didn't know. Laura smiled weakly. Thank you, Mr. Brown. No further questions. But then, David's lawyer rose. Mr. Brown, the defense started, voice steady. You say you're here to defend Christine, yet you have a documented history of years of neglect and abuse of her feelings. Why should this court believe that your intentions are noble? Christine bit her lip and gazed down. Kody bristled. I'm not here to explain how I behaved towards Christine in the past. I know I let her down. That's why she left me. That doesn't mean, though, that I want to watch her get hurt again. The defense attorney was far from finished. Did you ever say anything about being jealous about Christine getting over you? Kody paused. Initially, yes. But I also knew she was better than that. I just didn't think she'd do worse than me. Another gasp. Even Christine flinched at that flash of naked self-awareness. Then the defense attorney sneered. Do you blame David Woolley for the reason your ex-wife is happier without you? Kody snorted. Happier? You call this happiness? He waved around the courtroom. She's sitting there, devastated, suing the man she believed would cure her. I was no perfect husband, but I never took advantage of her. Christine blinked slowly. For the first time in years, she trusted him. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Brown. You are free to go. As Kody returned to the gallery, he passed by Christine. For an instant their eyes locked, and in that moment there was no bitterness, only recognition. Two individuals who had shared a lengthy, torturous past, and one dawning horror. They were both duped by David Woolley. As Kody sat down next to Janelle and their son Gabe, the mood in the courtroom changed. Lines of allegiance were no longer defined. Robin appeared shaken. Mary gazed straight ahead, inscrutable. Christine's lawyer rose and turned to the judge. Your Honor, by this testimony, we are showing a definite pattern of deliberate dishonesty on the part of the defendant, not just towards Christine but towards others in her social sphere. The judge nodded. It's compelling. We'll allow it into the record. Christine exhaled, barely realizing she'd been holding her breath. Then she whispered, almost to herself, he wasn't just a mistake. He was a trap. The drama from Kody Brown's surprise testimony still lingered heavy in the air like wildfire smoke. While many had anticipated fireworks in the courtroom, no one anticipated that Kody would confess his shortcomings, and more surprisingly come to Christine's defense with such passion. Nothing, however, could have prepared the courtroom for what was about to follow. The judge looked down at his docket. We will now hear from the defendant, Mr. David Woolley. Christine's whole body stiffened. Her clenched hands, which had gripped a tissue, tightened. Janelle put out a calming hand, resting a firm hand on her friend's knee, anchoring her in the present. Nothing, however, could calm Christine's racing heart as David Woolley stood up from the defendant's table, smoothed his immaculately pressed jacket, and came to the witness stand with all the conceit of a man who still believed he could get away with murder. He swore, eyes sweeping the courtroom. No feeling, no remorse, cold calculation. Christine gazed at him, her expression impassive. This was the man who whispered forever to her, who held her hand through tears over decades of Kody Brown's neglect. This was the man she led into her house, into her heart, into the inner sanctum she guarded for so many years. And now he was going to talk. Mr. Woolley, his lawyer started. Can you relate the court your version of things? David fidgeted with his mic. First, I want to say that I never intended to hurt Christine. I loved her very much. Still do. Christine snorted quietly. Janelle gave her a warning look, silently telling her to hold tight. I met Christine when we were both recovering, David went on. Yes, I was navigating a messy breakup. But I never meant to deceive her. My divorce documents were underway when we began dating. But you said you were divorced already, the lawyer told him, and he responded hesitantly. That was a slip-up, a miscalculation. I didn't want to frighten her off. The courtroom hushed. Even the judge arched an eyebrow. Christine's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection. The defendant had already admitted to doctoring documents to corroborate this alleged mistake. The judge nodded. Sustained. Mr. Woolley, this court isn't here to hear your love regrets. It's here to decide whether you knowingly defrauded and emotionally manipulated Miss Brown for personal benefit. Please, continue. David's jaw spasmed. Clearly he didn't appreciate being admonished. But he continued. I'll confess it. I saw the attention Christine was getting. I knew what she was. And yes, initially, I thought the publicity would be good for business. But later on I really grew to care for her. A ripple of shock swept through the room. Christine jumped to her feet. Care? Her voice broke. You cared for me? The judge turned. Miss Brown, please. No. I do have the right to respond, Christine said, advancing. He stood in my kitchen, prepared breakfast for my children, smiled at my grandbaby. And this is what he was thinking the entire time. David stared back at her. Unreadable. You said I was your world, she went on, voice building. That you'd waited your entire life for someone like me. That you knew what I was through with Kody. But you were building something for you. You viewed me as a platform, a project, a launch pad for your ego. Tears began to well in her eyes, but she didn't back down. Do you even know what it feels like to trust someone again after decades of being invisible? To finally be seen only to find out you were being used all over again? David remained silent. Christine's voice cracked. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed what little faith I had left in love. And my children witnessed me open my heart and invite you in. You deceived them too. And why? Clicks? Business leads? To establish your reputation on the ruins of mine. The judge banged his gavel, attempting to regain control. Miss Brown. But she was already crying. The dam had burst. Christine turned away, unable to bear the look at David any longer. Janelle hurried over from the gallery and held her in her arms. It's all right, Christine, she whispered, holding her as she wept into her shoulder. You don't have to be tough every single second. Robin, seated in the rear, appeared shaken. Even Mary had blanched, lips clamped tight. Whatever past drama had divided them, it now played second fiddle to this common terror. David talked again, but the ice in his tone cut like shards. She's dramatizing, he said. This is merely her attempt to gain public sympathy. The fact is, she craved the spotlight as much as I did. The whole courtroom stood still. Christine's tear-stained face turned to him, a look of tragedy crossing her face. I wanted a family, she whispered, not a brand, not a business model, just love. Laura Keegan rose, her voice cutting as a knife. Your Honor, let the record show the defendant's utter lack of remorse. Not only did he manipulate Miss Brown into a public affair on false pretenses, but now he disparages her character while she stands here open and wounded before this court. The judge nodded gravely. Recorded. Laura stepped toward the jury. What you're seeing here isn't just betrayal. It's emotional abuse wrapped in charm and packaged in love. This was never a relationship. This was a long con. She turned around toward Christine, still in her seat with Janelle's arm draped around her shoulders. And the victim isn't even just Christine. It's every individual who cheered her on after she escaped an abusive marriage. Every daughter who thought she had finally found happiness. Every fan who saw her and said, if Christine can love again, so can I. A woman in the rear of the courtroom started sobbing. The judge called for a break. As Christine rose slowly, she wiped her face, nodding at the jury, the judge, and finally at her lawyer. She seemed shattered, but also more authentic, more truthful than anyone who had ever been in the room with her. Outside, the press already buzzed. TikToks were going viral.
Reddit forums were erupting. YouTube live streams had broken records. But within the courtroom, Christine Brown was no reality TV star. She was a woman who had loved and lost, and refused to fall anyway. As she left the room, a gentle chant started among supporters outside. "We love you, Christine. You deserve better. Stay strong." She stopped, looked up and nodded. Not because she felt strong, but because she was still standing. Bang! The sun had started setting outside the courthouse, painting long shadows on the floor of the courtroom as everyone came back in after recess. The air was thick, full of tension. Reporters grouped at the back, microphones in hand. Fans filled the gallery, holding phones, tissues, and each other. In the plaintiff's booth, Christine Brown sat stiffly, her complexion pale, but her expression calm. Her mascara had smudged due to previous tears, but she couldn't be bothered. She wasn't here to act. She was here to get the job done. To her left, Janelle Brown provided an encouraging glance. Across from her in the opposing aisle, David Woolley slumped back in his chair, folded arms, icy eyes. The jury had deliberated nearly 3 hours. Quick. Too quick, most believed. And in court, quick typically translated to clear. Clearly innocent, or clearly guilty. "All rise," the bailiff said as the judge returned to the courtroom. Judge Harmon sat down and spoke to the jury foreperson. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with a navy suit and sharp eyes, rose to her feet. "We have, Your Honor." The courtroom leaned forward, held its breath. In the case of Christine Brown versus David Woolley, on the charge of fraud and emotional damages, we the jury find the defendant, a pause, guilty. The courtroom exploded. Gasps audible from the gallery. A handful of claps from the audience. One woman wept into her sleeve. Cameras recorded every possible angle as Christine's eyes went wide, then brimmed with new tears. Not tears of heartache this time, but relief. Janelle clutched her hand. David didn't blink. The judge nodded gravely. "Thank you." The court orders the defendant, David Woolley, to pay $250,000 in damages to Christine Brown for emotional and financial damages. In addition, he is to discontinue all commercial use of Christine's name, likeness, brand, or family imagery immediately. David's lawyer hunched forward, whispering urgently. But David merely shook his head ever so slightly, as if still believing this would pass. As if he were better than that. He wasn't. Christine rose slowly to face the judge. "Your Honor," she said softly. "May I speak?" The judge paused, then nodded. Briefly, Miss Brown. Christine turned to the courtroom. Not the judge or the jury, but everyone, the press, the fans, the doubters, the exes, and the man who had broken her trust. She swallowed hard. Her voice, when it came, was firm and clear. "I was 21 when I entered a plural marriage. I gave my whole adult life to a system that treated me like I was invisible. When I finally broke free, I figured the worst was over. I had no idea the next man I'd ever love would hurt me in a different kind of way." She looked straight at David. "You never raised your voice. You never slammed doors. But you planned every step. You viewed my healing as a shortcut to your success. You sold me a fairy tale while constructing your empire on my pain." David looked down but remained silent. Christine turned around to the gallery. "I tell my story not because I crave sympathy, but because someone viewing this needs to hear it. Someone who just broke up with a toxic person and believes the next person who pays them attention is the solution. Sometimes, they're just another lesson." She gazed at the jury. "You listened to me, and more importantly, you saw right through him. Thank you." Then she stood before the cameras, knowing millions would hear these words. "To every woman who's ever been told she's too much, too broken, or too loud after being hurt, I see you. Don't let one man's lie make you question your worth. I almost did, but I'm still here." The judge nodded slightly. "Thank you, Miss Brown." As Christine sat back down, the courtroom fell silent, not with fear, but with respect. In that instant, she was no longer a former reality television star. She was every woman who had risked surviving betrayal, once, twice, and still retain her dignity. Outside, the courthouse was swarming with people. A crowd stood waiting around the steps, holding their signs that read,